Hi, welcome back to Coldstream Rod Shop. I'm Derek Fraser. This episode, we're going to keep working on the 5-window coupes. We're going to start the assembly work on the rear lower tail pan. We've made a bunch of parts in previous episodes while we were building the Roadster that will ultimately go on these cars. So if you look inside here, here are some of the pieces we made. We made the rear tail pan itself. This is the lower floor extension that goes across the back. Then there's a support for the lower tail pan, and then this is the drip rail assembly. Right now I'm working on making these drip rail supports. I've made the first one. There's another piece we have to make that goes underneath this as well. So just going to step over to the bead roller. We're going to show you how I made this piece. That's an original one, and that's my first, well, actually second attempt because I made one previously. So let's walk over to the bead roller and we'll talk about it a little. So I'm going to go this way, the camera lady goes the other way. So again, same process as before. Started out with a pattern. That's the original wood buck that I'd used before. I've got another one over in the bench I'll show you there in a minute. On the tail pan assembly, there's actually two lines here, one for where the tail pan where it folds over and meets up with it, and then the drip rail itself, actually there's an indentation here. So this presented a little bit of a challenge as far as kind of bead rolling this edge. I couldn't use the regular step dies because you can't get into the corner. So what I did, I used a combination of a set of dies. So I'll take that out. You see right here, I used the bottom part of a step die, and I used the top part of my tipping die. So what that allowed me to do, it allows me to actually just go right in and right into that corner, bead roll that corner, and then do the flange around here. So once I cut this out and I bead rolled this edge, the next step is to fold this flange over right here, and just that gets folded over right over on the brake, so that's not a big deal. So over on the bench, I'll show you the buck that I made for these. Get the camera lady to follow us. It's a little bit of a tight quarters here. So what I created was I made a buck that's got the indentations on both sides, so I can do a left and a right. So essentially it's the same thing as before on the other episode. You put the buck in the vise and then knock the edges over. One thing I've been using is a nylon hammer. The nylon hammer will actually allow you to bend the metal over without stretching it if you're worried about stretching it. Sometimes you need the extra precision with a metal hammer. So the one edge is bent here on the brake. This one I bend it over on the buck. And then across the bottom, we have to reverse this flange. So I take the piece off, mount it back on the buck here, and then I can put it in my vise, and I can knock that flange over. So flange goes one way, flange goes the other way. That's it. That's the first one. 3 more to go. So I'll finish these up. I'm going to install them on both of the cars, and then we'll carry on with the assembly work for the sheet metal. up 4 sets, actually 3 complete sets of these drip rail supports. I have them installed on both of the coupes right now. You can see where I've spot welded in place. Originally, that's the way they were put in. They're actually spot welded to the quarter. You can see the reveal here, how it goes around the drip edge, and then how the piece of sheet metal folds into those grooves that I bead rolled it on here. So these are in place. The next step is actually to install this, and this is the rear floor pan extension. It goes underneath here. In order to get it in the right position and weld it in place, I'm going to have to assemble the rear pan, kind of put that in place, mark it, then take it off and then weld it. So like I said, this is a piece we made in another video when we were doing the Roadster. It's a relatively straightforward piece. Make a pattern. This edge here is bead rolled up with a step die, and then there's a large bead that goes down the center here and here. And this edge here is basically just tipped up with the tipping dies on the bead roller. And then for any distortion, basically use the shrinking die or the stretching die around this edge so that you've got a nice straight piece. So I'm going to work on this, get this done on both of them, and then hopefully I don't get ahead of myself over here on the back of the Roadster. So you can see these extensions have already ground off the welds on them. But over here on the Roadster is the section I took out of the back of the 5 window. So this actually sat in the back like this. The rear pan came across the back of the car. This piece here is the new piece I made there. This is the support that's in the front here that I made. But what I've got to make now is this vertical support piece, and then there's a little angled piece of metal here. It's just basically a piece of sheet metal bent at a 90 degree with a couple holes into it. So I'm going to make a couple of these up, so I'm going to take some measurements off of it and just do like we did before and make it up. Here we are with the lower deck lid panel installed. To install it, there's actually 4 bolts. They're 1/4 bolts on the side here. There's 3 on the bottom, and there's 1 up here that goes through the support. The 3 on the bottom, Ford actually had a little sheet metal piece that went underneath it, kind of like a washer. So I made those up as well. So that's here underneath each side. There's the lower deck lid panel actually gets folded over this support piece, just like a door skin would. So that's been folded over. Everything's got a nice shape to it. I chucked it up against the deck lid. It's got the same curvature, just like we want. I'm not quite ready to weld the last pieces in here because, like I said, there was another piece I had to make, which is it's this piece here. It's a support piece that goes right here. Now, Ford, when they installed these and put them together, they use rivets in all these holes, but we obviously don't have rivets. So what I'll be doing, I'll drill a couple holes here and a couple holes underneath the tabs, and I'll just do a spot weld to hold that in place. So I've made this up for the New York Coupe, and I'm going to carry on. The New York Coupe has the deck panel already installed exactly the same as this one. So what I'm going to do is I will spot weld all this stuff in place, put this in place, and keep moving along here. Okay, take 3. Here we are working on the back of the coupes. I've got the rear floor pan welded in. It's a support welded here to the lower deck lid. I've welded up from underneath here, so everything is all tightened in. The lower drip edge supports are welded in place, so this one's all done on the Moncton coupe. Didn't have time to put the cross piece here in that I'll show you in a minute. Over on the New York coupe, I've got almost to the same stage. Got the floor welded in, the lower floor welded in, the support for the deck lid is welded in place. I still have to come up from underneath and weld this part of the back of the floor to the bottom of the lower deck lid. Over here on the floor are some of the pieces that we worked on in this episode. The only piece missing here is the rear floor pan piece, but you know, we made these pieces up. These are extras we've actually made up for a potential 32 Roadster project in the future. This is the piece that I didn't get put on today. We'll do it on the next episode. So what we'll do is we'll continue working on the 32 5-window coupes, working on the trunk area, possibly some of the supports, but join us next week. We're going to keep on at this until we get it done. That's it for this week. Hopefully everybody enjoyed. Please like, tag, share, subscribe, and send your comments. Everybody have a great one.